Rachel Maddow is with us. Rachel, I think everyone wants to hear your thoughts on what we're watching, but let me just throw out a couple more things that I've heard from national security officials that I talked to. They said right now ambassadors from other countries are drafting cables describing the scene in America, in the nation's capital, that looks more like Benghazi. This was the reporting that I had that I've been talking about, a scene that doesn't look like one we're familiar to seeing here in America.
Yeah, one of the things that strikes me here, Nicole, is that, oddly, one of the things I'm grateful for is that this is being well covered by news cameras, by the C-SPAN cameras, by the cameras inside the Congress. And the cameras throughout the Capitol complex here are capturing the faces of these people who are breaking windows, who are breaking into offices, who are looting offices, and who, at least it appears in some cases, have brought firearms into the U.S. Capitol. Merrick Garland is going to be the next Attorney General of the United States. Lisa Monaco will be his Deputy Attorney General. Vanita Gupta will be the Assistant Attorney General number 3 at the Justice Department. And one of the big challenges they are going to have, maybe not a challenge, but one of the big jobs they're going to have is prosecuting lots of these people and putting them in jail for very long prison terms. And you see, it reminds me a little bit of Charlottesville, where we saw the white supremacist and Klan neo-Nazi protesters who did not feel the need to cover up their faces. Here you see the same thing. You see these men on the right side of the screen in this tape footage menacing a Capitol police officer. They don't feel the need to cover up their faces, not only because they don't wear masks for COVID, but because they feel like they have impunity to do this. They will soon find out they do not. That is going to be part of what the beginning of the Biden administration is like, is getting these people in jail. And the question, I think, for Republicans who have brought this on, who have indulged this, who helped the president create this expectation that if enough Trump supporters came with enough ammunition to Washington today, they could somehow stop Joe Biden from becoming the next president. There's a question as to whether or not the people who have politically made this possible and who have egged this on and who spoke at that rally and who have told these people to do this, whether they're elected officials or not, are also prepared to face the legal consequences of real law and order. Not fantasy cosplay or Law and Order that's about putting on, fake tactical gear you buy at Dick's Sporting Goods and pushing cops around because you've got 15 of your friends behind you. But real Law and Order that comes from a country that doesn't see this happen, that will never see this happen again, and that will punish the people who did it.
Rachel, Joe Biden today using language we've never heard him use. There's been a lot of pressure. I'm sure you see it, too, a lot of frustration that Trump hasn't been called out, that Republicans haven't been pressured more aggressively. Mitch McConnell got a lot of credit for the speech he gave on the floor of the Senate today, and it was incredibly newsworthy for the fact that it was the first day, the first time he broke with Trump in a meaningful way. What do you make of the president-elect's posture on this? And do you think enough pressure and enough political pain has been applied to Republicans who have incited this in the views of a lot of former national security officials today?
I feel like President-elect Biden is approaching this the way that you would want a leader to approach this, calling on other leaders to do the right thing, calling on Americans to recognize the severity of what is happening here, and calling on us to support the people who are in danger here and to support the law enforcement and soon-to-be military personnel who will be taking care of this problem. But I have to say, just as an observer, not only of today, but of what we saw leading up to this, the president's increasingly unhinged and untrammeled calling for something like this, his willingness to engage with, the calls by people like Mike Flynn, right, to put the military in the streets and to use force to redo the election and all that stuff. I feel like, as an observer of this, I don't much care what Donald Trump says right now. I don't much care what the Republicans who've caused this problem do to try to mitigate the impact of what they have done. This is a problem that will not be solved by Ted Cruz saying, "This isn't what I meant." This is not a problem that is going to be solved by Donald Trump saying, okay, come back tomorrow, or whatever mealy way that he could come up with this. This is a problem that will be solved by the police, and it looks increasingly like the military and the National Guard, physically reclaiming the Capitol building, and then the arrest and prosecution of everybody who carried this out, because this is a crime. And the people who instigated the crime will be held accountable for it. I do not believe that the people who instigated this crime are going to be the solution today. The solution today is the rest of us. The solution today is going to be the police and the National Guard who are going to be brought in to deal with criminals. That's what this is. You bring a gun into the U.S. Capitol, you smash glass, loot offices, break into Capitol buildings, set off gas. I mean, somebody's been shot. We don't know the circumstances of that. I mean, when that happens, the solution is not for Republicans to tone down their rhetoric or reverse their calls to incitement. I'm sort of done seeing their approach to American problems at this point.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.